Welcome everyone to One Horrifying Moment. I am Griffin Schiller, host of the FilmSpeak channel, where we like to say the conversation continues after the credits, and we're definitely going to have one massive conversation today regarding one of my favorite Tim Burton films. One Horrifying Moment is a special series from some of your favorite content creators as they come together to celebrate the horror genre on the eve of Halloween. In this playlist that I've linked over there, you will find deep dives into some of horror's best and most iconic moments. So please go support the amazing work by my fellow creators. And if you're a horror fan yourself with something to say, feel free to jump on board and create your own video dissecting one horrifying moment from a horror film that speaks to you, and feel free to add it to the playlist. But for now, let's talk about Sleepy Hollow. Yes, I know I was supposed to choose just one moment, but I discovered as I was really thinking about Sleepy Hollow and doing more research and digging deep into the weeds on this one that I just had entirely too much to say about one of Burton's most underrated gems. So here we are. If we were to boil down Tim Burton's whole MO as a filmmaker, it would be that he utilizes the framework of Gothic period pieces or grim ghostly tales to advocate for progress. He champions the outcasts and outsiders as the flag bearers of change and education. It's those who dare to be different and think outside the confines of what society deems as normal who enact real change for the betterment and longevity of said society, often through science and mysticism. We see this in Edward Scissorhands, as Edward, an invention of modern science, is responsible for shaking his suburban family out of their mundane lives. In Batman, Bruce Wayne, a product of wealth and power, is an outsider who uses his privilege to fight for progress and against the corrupt social structure that led to the death of his parents. And my favorite example of this might just be from Frankenweenie, which has an excellent scene in which a town of parents vilify the school's science teacher for opening the minds of their youth to the importance and necessity of science in a scathing critique of complacency in suburban America. Burton continuously preaches that science isn't good or bad, it's fact, and should be respected as such, nor used for selfish or nefarious intent. While obviously a point of interest in all of Burton's films, nowhere, at least in my opinion, is this exploration of progress versus tradition more apparent than in his 1999 adaptation of Washington Irving's iconic folktale, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. While Paramount and makeup effects designer Kevin Yeager had been working since 1993 to get an adaptation of Sleepy Hollow off the ground, Burton's own relationship with the Headless Horseman actually dates back to his time at Cal Arts. While enrolled at the institution, he had an apprenticeship as a Disney animator, and one of his teachers happened to work on the adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. After bringing in layouts of the chase sequence from the film, Burton became enamored with the Headless Horseman and actually credits his love of the character as one of the key factors that shaped his creative outlook. Not only did this make Burton the perfect candidate to direct Sleepy Hollow, but his desire to pay tribute to the Hammer horror films of the 50s, 60s, and 70s he so revered also informed the framework of his adaptation. A framework, I might add, that goes far beyond an innocent homage. Hammer Film Productions is often credited with reviving the Gothic horror genre during the Atomic Age/Cold War, where the majority of creature features focused on the cultural anxieties and fears of nuclear war via the creation of giant mutated monsters that desolated metropolitan areas. His quirky and lavish aesthetic, inspired by German Expressionism, clashed with the grungy, earthy tones of 90s horror. The genre, similarly to the 1950s, largely preyed on the fears of a tumultuous time period. The Gulf War, recession, LA riots, etc. While the Cold War had technically ended, society was still left with much to be afraid of, and when paired with the uncertainty and fear of the end of the millennium, a la Y2K's death by technology, Judgment Day via nuclear holocaust, the Antichrist, and other antiquated anxieties, the genre had a field day. However, instead of playing right into the hands of humanity's most primitive fears, Burton, always the brilliant outsider, took a step back and offered a new perspective as he examined the absurdity of the situation and basically said, guys, adding 3 zeros to the date isn't going to kill us. So, as he had successfully done many times before, under the guise of the distant past, Burton proceeded to advocate for enlightened ideologies with his version of Sleepy Hollow. In stark contrast to Irving's original tale, in which the protagonist, Ichabod Crane, is the village school teacher, Burton's lead is a New York City police constable dispatched to the small town of Sleepy Hollow to investigate a series of murders. Peter and Dirk Van Garrett, a wealthy father and son, and a widow, Emily Winship. From the moment we're introduced to Johnny Depp's eclectic outsider, we understand that he's a man who's been at war with the archaic practices of the criminal justice system. He's a futurist who believes in scientific fact and is passionate about integrating said science into police procedures, what we would call forensic science, to usher in more civilized practices. When Crane arrives in Sleepy Hollow, he's immediately greeted and briefed by the town elders, wealthy farmer and businessman Police Van Tassel, town doctor Thomas Lancaster, the Reverend Steenwick, notary James Hardenbrook, and magistrate Samuel Phillips. In a scene which perfectly illustrates the power and stature these men have over the town, Burton establishes the pillars of the old world: wealth, community, religion, and law and order. These men represent the confines by which their town is governed, and anything that does not fall into these confines is outcasted or ruled as evil or unholy. As they attempt to strike fear in the heart of the outsider through their tale of the Headless Horseman, who they believe to be the culprit of these murders, they reveal their incredibly narrow outlook on the world. If something or someone presents itself in a way in which they can't immediately comprehend, it must be an omen sent from hell and discarded as such. Reverend Steenwick even thrusts a Bible upon Crane when the constable tries to reason with their fears, stating,
"They tell me that you brought books and trappings of scientific investigation. This is the only book I recommend you read."
Ironically, the first page of said Bible contains a family tree of the Van Tassels, only further critiquing their warped view of the world. Crane, a man who's had his faith stripped from him by the shackles of their world, objects, offering a more nuanced approach that even ghosts and ghouls can be explained. And thus, as Crane embarks upon his investigation, Burton proceeds to deconstruct and critique each of the pillars and their inability to accept change. Following the murder of Jonathan Masbeth, a servant in the Van Garrett household, Crane is tipped off by Magistrate Phillips that the servant isn't the fourth victim, but the fifth, hinting at the fact that the widow died pregnant. As town magistrate, Phillips swore an oath to the people of the community that he would keep and protect their secrets as it pertained to legal advice. However, in order to assist with the investigation, he broke his oath, enraging the town elders and causing Phillips to flee for his own life, sealing his fate as the sixth victim while wearing a talisman that was supposed to protect him from the horseman. The irony of the situation is that, one, falling back on religious beliefs out of desperation couldn't save him from death, and two, because of the confines of the society he serves in, he sealed his fate by cooperating with the authorities in order to assist with the investigation. However, by doing that, he was actually carrying out his civic duty, and it's only by running away from the community that he serves for his own selfish reasons that he's killed for it. Through this, Burton critiques those in public office that run away from their sworn duty in an effort to protect themselves, highlighting the lie that the people had a voice in the governance of themselves, as those elected to power collaborated within an oligarchy to make decisions that benefit them. If this is starting to sound eerily relevant and topical, just you wait. This encounter also serves as a wake-up call for Crane, as he discovers there is in fact a Headless Horseman. However, as opposed to the townsfolk who view it one-dimensionally, Crane deducts that there's more to uncover. Next, Crane and the son of poor Jonathan Masbeth, young Masbeth, dig up the body of the widow Winship and take her to the operating table of Dr. Lancaster in order to find out the truth regarding her unborn child. The doctor, whose methodology is very much outdated, proceeds to criticize Crane for defiling the body with his instruments of science. The reality is, Crane's methods yielded results. If Lancaster had done his job right in the first place, instead of neglecting his duties due to his own personal beliefs or fear of being discovered as a co-conspirator, the investigation would be one step closer to finding answers. The same is true for the rest of the elders. Crane pays notary Hardenbrook a visit in which he discovers Peter Van Garrett's last will and testament and marriage certificate to widow Winship. Hardenbrook had drafted a new will bequeathing Van Garrett's estate to Winship and child, while Reverend Steenwick, who, we'll get to a little bit later on, married the two lovers in secret. Similarly to Magistrate Phillips, Hardenbrook is steered away from his civic duties out of fear that his actions were unholy and angered the powers that be. And once the truth about Van Garrett and Winship is uncovered by Crane, he hangs himself like a coward. Burton again criticizes the power structure, acknowledging that every attempt to venture outside the confines of what their society deems as acceptable are thwarted by the God-fearing nature that constricts them. The affluent aren't allowed to marry poor, new money isn't accepted in the face of old money where legacy matters most. The older generations fear change and cling to their antiquated ideologies for as long as they can. A point, I might add, that's equally relevant today. They're convinced that by implementing change and growth for the younger and/or poorer generation, they'll lose status as a result. As Burton continues to condemn a fear-mongering generation, he calls upon the concept of magic and witchcraft to further this indictment. As we've seen in countless pieces of literature before, Burton presents both magic and science as one and the same. Both are methods devised to understand the natural world, both embody a small collection of general principles which can be adopted to specific situations, both include very engineering-like sensibilities of cause and effect, and most importantly, both are viewed as threats to the status quo, and those who wield them are considered outcasts. Magic and science, witchcraft and forensics, as it pertains to Sleepy Hollow, they are shunned by a generation who fears them and/or the progress it could bring. Crane is written off or dismissed for his faith in reason, and witches, even the good ones, are executed due to a society that fears powerful and intelligent women. It views them as unholy Satanists. Early on in the film, Katrina gifts Crane a book of spells, and Crane introduces Katrina to a thaumatrope. On one side of the optical illusion, a cage, the other, a cardinal, and it's only when spun together a complete image is captured. As Crane puts it,
"It is no magic. It is what we call optics. Separate pictures which become one in the spinning. It is truth, but truth is not always appearance."
While both science and magic can be manipulated out of selfishness for nefarious intent, that's only one perspective of the whole picture. There's virtue and selflessness that often bring about the betterment of humankind. It's not easy to separate your own biases from the truth, and even Crane himself struggles with that. However, it is the pathway to true enlightenment. As the mystery of the Horseman begins to unravel, Crane suspects Katrina is behind the murders. He remembers the spell marking underneath his bed placed by the young witch and the one in the church following a horseman attack. In an argument with young Masbeth, the constable affirms that he has good reason for his accusation, to which the assistant accuses him of being bewitched by reason. Crane responds,
"I am beaten down by it. Villainy wears many masks, none so dangerous as the mask of virtue."
Through beautifully interwoven flashbacks, it becomes clearer as to why Crane is the way he is. Similarly to Katrina, his mother, a loving, selfless caregiver with remarkable gifts, was tried for witchcraft and thus berated, tortured, and eventually murdered out of the fear begotten by religion. These flashbacks, presented as recurring nightmares, shows the audience that Ichabod has first-hand experience with the evils brought about by a failure to accept the new world. Something so seemingly innocent and pure, when taken at face value, is immediately demonized by the old world for not confining to the constructs of their reality. There's no room for change or progress because it contradicts the very pillars their society is centered around. That was the day young Crane lost his faith. He felt betrayed by the very people he loved and who loved him, and even as he manages to cut through the bullshit of a less modern society, he still clings onto his warped perception of it as a result of his childhood trauma brought about by the old world. This cynicism is the final obstacle standing in the way of Crane and true enlightenment. By deducting that all signs point to Katrina controlling the Horseman, Crane is only seeing what he chooses to, thus rejecting his own motto from before. It is only once he takes another look at the thaumatrope that the error of his ways clicks. He opens the Book of Spells and discovers the spell cast by Katrina was a selfless spell of protection. The true culprit is then revealed to be Lady Van Tassel, a victim turned villain birthed out of the same societal evils that plagued Crane. In a delicious turn of events during which Miranda Richardson is wonderfully hammy, oh my gosh, she's so good, Lady Van Tassel's family name is revealed to be Archer. Her family served the Van Garretts until her father died and they were evicted from their home in favor of the Van Tassels. No one in the town would take them in because her mother was suspected of witchcraft. Her mother passed on all she knew to her two kids and died due to her hardships a year later. Lady Van Tassel and her sister eventually crossed paths with the Hessian, or the Headless Horseman, and witnessed his death. It was in that moment that Van Tassel pledged her soul to Satan if he would resurrect the Horseman to carry out vengeance against those that destroyed her family. In this reveal, Burton illustrates the selfish manipulation of magic. However, never loses sight of the problematic power structure that made way for such wickedness. What's brilliant about Lady Van Tassel's plan, though, is she weaponizes the pillars of the old world against themselves as it devours itself. Magistrate Phillips and Notary Hardenbrook were manipulated out of their sworn civic duties through fear. Reverend Steenwick, a God-fearing hypocrite, fell victim to lust after sleeping with Lady Van Tassel. And Dr. Lancaster was drawn into the plot through blackmail after Lady Van Tassel found him fornicating with the servant girls. Her thirst for vengeance even claims the life of her own sister, a crone witch in the woods who assists Ichabod with his investigation. As for Baltus Van Tassel, he, the town leader, is not only speared by the Horseman from the supposed safety of the town church, but is removed from power by the very nepotistic laws that led to his rise. To cap it all off, each of the elders are executed in the most medieval of ways: decapitation. After eliminating all other heirs and witnesses, she summons the Horseman to finish the final obstacle, Katrina. Lady Van Tassel is able to temporarily profit off of the pillars that displaced her in order to achieve vengeance, but those selfish desires and blind ambition are ultimately her undoing. After an exhilarating carriage chase, Lady Van Tassel shoots Crane, blindly assuming he's dead. She then proceeds to direct the Horseman towards Katrina, only to be foiled by Crane, who's discovered to still be alive. The bullet was actually stopped by Katrina's Book of Spells, a gift selflessly bestowed upon Ichabod for protection. Burton's metaphor of the bullet being stopped by the book is just a more literal way for him to acknowledge that scientific fact led to human preservation by saving Crane's life and allowing him to defeat evil. In this moment, Burton finalizes his argument that the downfall of humanity is the backwards ideologies of the selfish and narrow-minded. it's through the selfless preservation of humanity, accepting new ideologies and scientific fact, that we progress as a species and are able to enter a new age of enlightenment. Sleepy Hollow is one of Burton's boldest and most exciting forays into genre thrills. It's a film that harkens back to the atmosphere, camp, and graphic violence of Hammer horror films to reimagine a classic folktale, making for essential Halloween viewing. But more importantly, the film is elevated when considering its statement on humanity. As the world trembled in fear on the eve of the new millennia, Burton reminded audiences that to achieve a better world, we must embrace new ideologies, especially those founded upon truth and scientific fact. Through the entirety of writing this essay, watching the film, and taking in the world around us today, Sleepy Hollow's messaging has only gotten more topical. We have inept leadership in this country that rejects the notion of science, truth, and fact in order to push a political agenda, and as a result, we are still rejecting ideologies that shouldn't even be up for debate. Progress isn't something to be afraid of, and as the pillars of regression and complacency collapse, and rest assured, if they haven't already, they will, change offers the hope and optimism of a brighter tomorrow.
Just in time for a new century.
Thanks guys for checking out this analysis of Sleepy Hollow. I really had a fun time putting this thing together, digging deep into the weeds on it. I love this film so much, and I really have ever since the first time I saw it. And so I want to hear from you all, and I want to know what your thoughts and opinions are on Sleepy Hollow down in the comment section below. Do you feel that it's one of Burton's most underrated films? Does it not quite click for you? Whatever your thoughts are, I want to hear all about it down in the comment section below. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the FilmSpeak channel for more videos such as this. I've got one coming up at the beginning of November for Temple of Doom, and oh my god, I am thrilled to share that with you. You're definitely going to want to make sure you stay tuned and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss that one. You can always like FilmSpeak on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, just search FilmSpeak, and then if you like me specifically and you like what I have to say, you can give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning into this video. Have a great Halloween, and I will catch you back here for my analysis of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. But until then, take care.